All right, let's talk about a piece of software that everyone has used but probably nobody really thinks about. I'm talking, of course, about the humble, always there, Windows Notepad.
You know exactly what it is. It's like a digital piece of paper, right? It's where you paste something to get rid of all the weird formatting, or just, quickly type down a phone number. It's the most basic, no-frills app you can imagine. It's just always been there.
But what if I told you that's not the whole story? What if behind that simple icon, there's a wild history full of marketing tricks, legendary computer bugs, and a crazy, sudden transformation? Yeah, for real.
Okay, let's dive right in. Section 1, Notepad's Secret Origin. And right off the bat, here's the first big surprise. Notepad was never created just to be a simple text editor. Nope, that wasn't its main job at all. So picture this. It's 1983. Microsoft is at this huge computer expo, Comdex, and they show off a program called Multi-Tool Notepad. Its creator, a developer named Richard Brody, built it for a very specific reason. And that reason was to sell a brand new, kind of weird piece of hardware. I'm talking about the very first Microsoft mouse. And listen, this mouse was not cheap. It cost $195. You gotta remember, back then, most people had never even seen a computer mouse. They were like, what is this thing? So Microsoft had to give them a reason to buy it. They bundled it with software that actually used the mouse, and yep, Notepad was a key part of that deal.
So wait, why isn't it called Multi-Tool Notepad anymore? Well, this marketing genius, Roland Hansen, apparently went to Bill Gates and said, look, this whole multi-tool brand, it's not working. His whole philosophy was the brand is the hero. Everything needed to be tied back to the main company. So Multi-Tool Notepad became Windows Notepad. And get this, in that exact same strategic shift, another project called Interface Manager got a new name too. You might have heard of it. It was called Windows.
All right, on to our next section, decades of simple text. So after its secret life as a marketing tool, Notepad basically just settled down. It found its role and stuck with it, quietly and without changing, for over 30 years.
And that role was to be a plain text editor. Its one and only job was to deal with pure, raw, unformatted text. We're talking no bold, no italics, no fancy fonts, just the characters. That's it. And honestly, that's exactly why so many developers and IT folks have sworn by it for decades. It's clean.
But that simplicity, man, it came with some legendary limitations. For ages, it didn't even have basic shortcuts like Ctrl+S to save. And you know how if you opened a file from a Mac or a Linux computer, it would look like one giant jumbled line of text? Yeah, it couldn't figure that out until 2018, all because of a tiny difference in how they mark the end of a line. It was just stubbornly simple, sometimes to the point of being a real pain.
Oh, and the file size limit? It was a joke. Back on like Windows 3.1, it couldn't open a file bigger than 54 kilobytes. That's tiny. By Windows 95, it was a whopping 64 KB. Woo! Even on Windows XP, it would just give up on anything over 32 megs. For years, Microsoft's official advice was basically, yeah, don't use Notepad for that. Go use WordPad. But for all of its plainness, Notepad was hiding one of the weirdest and most famous bugs in the entire history of computing.
Okay, so here's what you had to do. On an old machine running Windows XP, you'd open a brand new Notepad file. You'd type this exact phrase, Bush hid the facts. 4 simple words. Then you'd save the file, close it, and then open it back up. And instead of your text, you'd see a bunch of what looked like random Chinese characters. It was wild. And no, it wasn't some hidden political message or an Easter egg from a programmer. It was just a weird glitch. Basically, the way the letters were arranged in that specific phrase accidentally tricked Windows into thinking it was a different kind of text file, a specific format called Unicode. The computer got confused, and that gibberish was the result, an absolute classic bug. So for decades, Notepad was just frozen. Nothing changed. And then all of a sudden, everything changed, and it changed fast, which brings us to Section 3, a sudden evolution.
Okay, the single biggest thing to happen to Notepad in, forever was in 2019. Microsoft made a really critical decision. They took Notepad out of the core Windows operating system and put it on the Microsoft Store as its own separate app. Now, this might sound boring, but it was huge. It meant they could finally update it whenever they wanted, instead of having to wait for a whole new version of Windows to come out.
And that one change picked off what you could only call a Notepad renaissance.
All of a sudden, bam, we got a modern design. We got dark mode. Then came features people have been begging for literally decades, things like spellcheck and autocorrect, and now it's getting AI tools to help you rewrite stuff and even support for Markdown. I mean, think about it. It has changed more in the last few years than in the entire 30 years before that. It's crazy.
I mean, look at the difference. The old, classic Notepad, it was stuck with those Windows-only text files, that pathetic file size limit. Today's Notepad, it can handle files from any system, the size limit is up around a gigabyte, and it gets new features constantly through the store. And the best part is, they've added all this cool modern stuff without wrecking what made it great in the first place. Its core simplicity.
So what does all this mean? Where do we go from here? Let's talk about it in our final section, the future of a classic. What can this little app's wild ride tell us about the software we use every day?
When you really think about it, Notepad's story is kind of the story of the personal computer, just shrunk down. It started as a marketing gimmick to sell a weird new gadget. Then it became this super reliable, basic tool that was always there. And now it's a modern app with AI built in, and it's still a fundamental part of Windows.
There's a great quote from Raymond Chen, who's been a developer at Microsoft forever, and he just nails it. He said, "Maintaining Notepad is not a full-time job, but it's not an empty job either." And that's just perfect, right? It's never been the star of the show, but its quiet, dependable job has always been super important.
And that kind of leaves us with one last big question to chew on. We live in a world of these huge, bloated apps that try to do absolutely everything. So is Notepad's success a lesson for us? Maybe the future of really great software isn't about cramming in more and more features, but about doing one simple thing and doing it perfectly. Just something to think about.